Anderson. I'm a Martin County native, and my family was among one of the first to settle in an area called New Monrovia near Port Salerno. My grandfather migrated here from the Bahamas in the early 1900s, and generations of my family have grown up here in Martin County. My father, as well as my aunts, uncles, and cousins, attended the school you see here behind me. The Salerno Colored School, built in 1930, isn't a remarkable structure. As you can see, it's a basic 25 by 30 foot, one-room wood frame schoolhouse. But what it lacks in structure, it makes up for in its stature in the New Monrovia community. The building itself, believed to be the only surviving one-room schoolhouse on the Treasure Coast, may be small in scale and simple in design, but it's the history and the stories told from within these walls that had such an impact on those who were educated here that make it truly remarkable. The Salerno Colored School was one of the first schools built in Martin County to educate African American children. The school featured a low stage and chalkboard at the front of the room, a potbelly stove in the corner for heat, and a row of desks for each grade level. And although it was officially called the Salerno Colored School, it had a more affectionate name in the community. Costello Williams was a beloved and respected teacher who taught here for many years. To her students, she was their world. The school and Mrs. Williams became the center of the community, and everyone that attended classes identified themselves as students at Mrs. Williams' school. Mrs. Williams' school, attended by some of Martin County's most prominent citizens, eventually shuttered its doors and fell into disrepair. Now saved from demolition by Martin County, this educational gem has been preserved and restored to its original glory. It's a beautiful reminder of a community's past, an important piece of an area's history. Many students that attended the Salerno Colored School still live in Martin County. It's the fascinating stories of those students that went to school here all those years ago that create the fabric of the New Monrovia community today. Their stories of this historic treasure have never been told until now.
Our social life centered around our family life and church. We went to school together, we played together, we went to various churches together, and it was just wonderful. We had a great time.
Life in the New Monrovia community centered on the Salerno Colored School and the grounds that surrounded it. Not only was it a place of learning, it was a place for social gatherings, a spot for children to play, and where generations of residents made lasting memories. Helen Quintana was one of those children.
We came from every home in the community, and that's where we all gathered together for our formative years.
Well, because the school was like the center of the community.
Boise Herring is Helen's cousin. They lived down the street from each other while they attended Mrs. Williams' school in the 1950s.
You look to that day when you would start school. Starting school was it wasn't much more to do besides go to school and come home and play and shoot marbles. There wasn't any recreation. We didn't go to the movies. Even when the school day was over, we played at the school ground. We played in the swing, and we played in the seesaw, and because that's where the playthings were in the community.
My uncle, Dr. David L. Anderson, also known as Doc, attended the Salerno Colored School and went on to become the first African American to serve on the Martin County School Board.
Back then, the only activities we had was school and church. That was the central place where we had our activities and little socials that Mrs. Williams saw that we had.
As I think about that building, I even visualize girls like me going every day to school with our hair freshly braided and with the bows and our socks on and dresses that our parents made. We had a lot of pride in ourselves.
When we would get to school, we had a period of free time before school took in, as we called it, because we all got there a little early, and we played games. We played jump rope, or we did things like that until officially the school day began.
And our signal to come in was the ringing of this big handbell. The first ring meant that we needed to get water, use the restroom, wash our hands, or whatever. The second bell, we were to line up.
I remember us saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag in the schoolyard.
The flag was a ceremonial thing for Mrs. Williams. We walked out to the flagpole, said the Pledge of Allegiance, raised the flag, and then we would march back into the schoolhouse and we would have devotion.
We would line up in two lines, the boys on one side, the girls on one side, because the school had two doors in the front, and that's how we would enter. Girls in one door, boys in another door.
She always had assignments on the board when we got there. What, first and second graders will be doing and third and fourth graders will be doing. The school only went to 4 grades when I was there. Now, I understand before me and maybe after me, it might have gone as much as 6, depending upon the population. I was the only one in my grade level.
Every day, the schoolhouse was filled with children eager to learn. Teaching multiple grades in one room was certainly challenging, but at the end of the day, each student received a well-rounded education.
And Mrs. Williams would write the lessons on each blackboard, and then she would go over the lessons. She taught row by row. We sat in rows according to our grade levels.
I can remember wanting to rush out to be the one to put up the flag, to help the 2 or 3 guys to put up the flag, because the flag was something that was cherished and respected and revered. It couldn't touch the ground, it could never get wet. If we were in school and it started raining, we'd dash out quick to get that flag down, get it folded up and get it in.
And everybody had to say a Bible verse. And I remember that my favorite Bible verse was, Jesus wept. That's the shortest verse in the Bible.
Like, there was a book we read called Mr. Bones. And I was reading and I go, and Mr. Bones walked on, and Mr. Bones stopped by the barn. That's the way I read for a long time. It took him a long time for me to be broken from that, And the kid would start laughing, and Mrs. Williams would say, shut up, at least he knows what he's saying,
The students who attended Mrs. Williams' school felt the educator's lasting impact throughout their lives. Mrs. Williams left an undeniable and indelible mark on the children she taught.
It's one thing I think I learned from Ms. Williams was follow instructions. I remember she would say, read and follow instructions. She would say, if you can follow instructions, you'll pass anything.
You can do it. She instilled that in all of her students. Don't quit. Don't quit. The game isn't over until you quit.
Costello Williams had a strong influence on Marion M. Carpenter as she went to become a local educator and principal.
She was a very positive person, and she made us believe that we can do anything, we could accomplish anything if we work hard.
Mrs. Williams played multiple roles as a teacher. She was motherly, she was stern, she commanded respect. She was an amazing teacher.
Everybody at some point was on that stage. You were either reading something, singing something, reciting a poem, but I think that spoke volumes to us not being bashful, you know, being able to face people, face an audience, because she had you do that.
Ms. Williams told us, when you take a bath, always wash between your toes and always dry between your toes. And that was something I thought, wow, I never heard that before, you know. And when I bathe my little grandchildren now, I always make sure that I wash between their toes.
Mrs. Williams is loving, caring, and she meant what she said and said what she meant.
She wore a lot of hats. I mean, she was a teacher, she was a nurse, she was a guidance counselor, you know, I mean, she was everything.
And Mrs. Williams kept up with us all the way in our accomplishment. And when she found out we'd moved from one step to the other, one level or whatever, she was so proud of us that she would call us and she said, I know you could do it. I knew it. I knew it would happen. She was just a wonderful person.
You know, that lady should have written a book before she died. She had such a treasure of things in her heart and soul and body that should have been spread across the nation, across the world.
For decades, the schoolhouse sat neglected and in a state of disrepair. Many felt that the building was an eyesore and should be demolished. That's where Martin County stepped in, undertaking an extensive project to rebuild and restore this historic structure.
A lot of Martin County's most productive citizens attended that school. So I think we needed to preserve it.
In 1999, following its use by the school district, the one-room schoolhouse began its stint as the home for the Martin County Parks and Recreations Department after-school program. The building endured heavy use over the next 5 years. In 2004, the school was damaged when the roof was breached during Hurricanes Francis and Jean, and although temporary tarps were installed, later storms caused additional damage. The question then became whether or not the building should be saved. Consultants recommended demolishing the building, believing it was beyond repair. The community and Martin County General Services staff fought to save the building, but it sat neglected until, in 2011, Martin County had the necessary funds to begin the process to restore the eyesore.
Our school was a fiber in our community that were intertwined with our school, with our church, and our families. That was our school.
It's very important to have that building because it's a part of our history, a part of our heritage, and there were other buildings in other communities that were not saved, they were torn down. So that one, the fact that that one remained is a blessing, actually.
Money to save the structure was pieced together from the insurance settlement, General Services dollars, and the County Commission District 4 funds. The county went to work, and the entire building had to be disassembled to the frame. 2 of the original walls were saved. A new roof, ceilings, and floors were installed. Replica wood panel doors were placed in the original location of the twin entry doors, and the windows were replaced with period single-hung versions. To make the interior of the schoolhouse appear as it did in its heyday, county staff worked with South Fork High School woodshop students to construct 24 student desks similar to those that once filled the classroom. The stage at the front of the room was rebuilt. Replicas of the original kerosene lanterns now hang from the ceiling for light. Green chalkboards were installed in their original locations. The restored one-room schoolhouse was officially rededicated on March 9, 2013. Elected officials, staff, former students, and historians gathered at the site to celebrate the importance of this historic structure. Then on April 29th of the same year, the Salerno Colored School was honored with the distinction of being placed on the Martin County Local Registrar of Historic Landmarks. A bronze plaque just outside the doors marks the historic significance of this building that was once the center of the new Monrovia community.
There are things in life that are worth keeping, and the easiest thing to have done would have been to push that building down, which some people suggested, okay? But thank God someone heard our voice and heard our cries and came to the rescue.
And I just want those people that were responsible for restoring that school to know how appreciative our community is to them.
Mrs. Williams was all things to many. She may be gone, but her legacy lives on in the hearts and minds of the students who spent much of their childhood learning at her school. Even though decades have passed since their time spent at the schoolhouse, the students can easily recall how at the end of each day they joined together to sing. I'm Carrie Anderson. Thank you for watching.
If I have wounded any souls today,
If I have caused one foot to go astray,
If I have walked in my own willful way, dear Lord.
Dear Lord, forgive. Good night, Miss Williams.